To begin, where do you want to start? Where does your spiritual journey?
I'll start maybe where my first contact with Christ, I guess. Growing up in Iowa, kind of this awkward Indian Hindu kid in the middle of the cornfields.
Yeah.
And it was lonely. And that's not to say that I wasn't loved and that I didn't have friends, but internally there was a real loneliness and a longing for belonging.
Mm-hmm.
And I graduated still having that longing for more.
Mm-hmm.
I was kind of a nerd in high school. We were talking about that.
Yep.
So, longing to be more popular, like that was the idol. That was the idol for me, to be popular, to be surrounded by friends and all of that. And so I went off to college when I was 16. I graduated early and went off to college. And I sought that popularity in not the most constructive of ways.
Yeah.
Kind of got into the party scene and ended up with alcohol poisoning when I was 17, back when I was at home for Christmas. And so I'm in our local hospital, so that was great because I'm a minor. They have to call my parents, and that was a fun conversation. But there was a preacher's daughter who was peripherally friends with the people that I had been out with. And she came to the hospital, and she sat in the waiting room, and she prayed while they were treating me.
Wow.
And I found that out later, and like having no experience with that, that was also mystifying. Like, who does that? What does that mean? Why does God want me here? Why am I still here? But there was just this emptiness still in me. And so those questions just continued to plague me. And so when I went back to the university, I started exploring different faiths. I was kind of on my own, and I decided I was Christian because somehow I came to that. I was reading a little bit of scripture and all of that. And I'm like, okay, this makes sense. It's a God who is with us, sent his son. Okay, I get that. So then I became Christian.
We're talking tonight with Rahki McCormick, former Hindu. Even just so far in your story, it's such a wonderful, interesting thing. These little touches that God has sent you, and the bravery and the courage of those Christians to be able to reach out in those small ways. Certainly planting seeds, even if those, as you said, the seeds sort of take time to germinate. But, so what happened next?
Well, so then I went back to university, and my best friend, somehow, like the details are nebulous. I don't remember exactly how it happened, but she ended up inviting me to Mass with her because she's Catholic, and she finally figured out I was like going to different churches, and I'm sure she'll call me and be like, that's not how that happened, but that's okay. Somehow she invited me to Mass with her. And so I was at my very first Mass, and so she was explaining to me before communion and all of that. But then at the elevation, I just had this mystical sense and experience, which I didn't have language for at the time, but looking back on it, just this knowledge that God is real, that Jesus is real, that he's present in the Eucharist, and that he has called me home, and this is where I belong. And so at that moment, my question was, how do I get that?
Yeah.
That was God's answer to my prayer all along. Yeah, and so, I came into the church, and I like to say that was kind of my first yes, but it was like I was joining something.
Sure.
So that was my yes to the church, but I think the whole process was just kind of this slow spiral deeper into the heart of Christ.
Yeah.
And in terms of like giving my life to the Lord, that came a little later.
Sure.
But even in the difficulty, I think that was a moment where just understanding that surrender is the key.
Yeah, we keep.
Right. Conversion isn't a one-time thing. It's a continual process, deeper and deeper, and into the journey, into the heart of Christ, into who he has created us to be in our own unique and unrepeatable selves. And,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. What is your mother still alive?
No, she unfortunately passed away a couple years ago at the beginning of the pandemic.
Okay. Very good.
Yeah. But she used to come to Mass with me. And so she loved the high Mass with the smells and the bells because it reminded her of temple. And she did end up getting baptized before she died.
Beautiful.
So, yeah.